Just maybe opening the aperture a little bit here. The staffing issue is one of the biggest things they're talking about. But what are some other trends? What are some other concerns that you're seeing out there? We talk a lot about the fourth industrial revolution, where we are on that trajectory. And Brett and I were, at a forum recently, brought leaders from across the country, and they basically said that we're not nearly as far along this trajectory of 4 hours we'd like to believe in manufacturing sector. We've kind of dressed up, the third hour and called it 4 hour. What do you see here in the Midwest and Nebraska? And what are your thoughts on that?
Great question. I've seen data that suggests that Nebraska is objectively behind. I think that it becomes a little bit company specific. You'll just sort of get those individuals who are more interested and more passionate. Maybe they're the ones who read the Industry 4.0 magazines on their spare time. And so they're just naturally more gravitated toward that level of investment and that way to go with their company. So it's a little bit one-off, but I think to answer your question, while we certainly have many companies that are great at adopting Industry 4.0 practices, and they're using really sophisticated automated processes because they recognize the consistency benefits, the uptime, the safety aspects of it, et cetera. As a whole, Nebraska's behind the national average. We have a lot of upside and upside potential. Without actually having to execute any of the financial, it's easy for me to sit here in the stands and yell at the players. But, in this environment, I like to think that if I were running a facility and I don't see the workforce cavalry coming and I don't see the people, well, I would engage with my local school and I would do internships and I would do as much as I could with high school engagements. The time is now. The time was 5 years ago, but the time is now to really lean in on investment for Industry 4.0 practices. I think that I remember having this conversation 15 years ago. Whenever automation is spoken about, it's usually done in a well, doesn't that take jobs type of thing. And I don't think I haven't heard anyone make that point. The point now, automation is all about unlocking productivity that you're held back on now. And then after that automation, so to speak, is executed, that investment's executed, you upskill your workers, right? And you take the person who's been picking up boxes or been sort of doing the rudimentary undesired work. They're now the ones who have a more sophisticated engagement with their line. Let's say, envisioning sort of a production line and they're doing more manual tasks. And let's hypothetically say that a robot or a belt or some system of automation is relieving the physical attributes of their job. They are there and they're now doing higher value added work. So it's more engaging for the employee. It's higher capacity for that line and production for the company. Is it expensive? I mean, well, 2 years ago, capital was pretty easy to come by. Now capital is a little more difficult to come by, but I would still hypothesize, depending on the situation, these projects still pay back. You just got to find the right application for them. And I think that therein lies the opportunity, right? Is getting folks to adopt. Number of ways to do that. My presentation in May, I tried to remind folks that, with a picture of a fully automated automobile manufacturer that's got 36 robots, riveting and welding vehicles together, that's probably not your step one. That's the step that took 35 or 40 years for a company to get to, right? I really just want to help illuminate companies into that step one doesn't have to be the $100 million investment. Step one can be a server and a data collection system that allows you to make more sophisticated decisions and iteratively get companies to adopting these things. A little bit in the rabbit hole here, Tim. I hope I haven't lost you, but
No.
it's Nebraska's behind. I think the Midwest, it pockets, but as a whole, the data shows objectively that we're behind.
Yeah, we just spoke to somebody that's in a similar role in Michigan, actually, and very, very similar, kind of thoughts with respect to where they are. And you think of Michigan, it's the center of the automotive industry. And you think high tech, and 20 years ago, robotic arms, welding and riveting. But they too see the challenges of a lot of technology is stovepiped in systems. They'll bring a robot in, but it doesn't talk to the robot in the next, station down the line. So there's this lack of interconnectedness that we need to work toward. But I think it's some of this stuff we talk about, Brett, making awareness about the technology aspect, the high tech aspect, robotics, the engineering involved, the computer technology involved in all this. That's going to attract, I think, younger people into the workforce. The more we get them out there and exposed to it, and in your role out there talking with the manufacturers, the idea of getting out into schools and colleges and opening up their manufacturing facilities for people to come in and see it. And we just had some of our people return yesterday from a facility that produces the lion's share of all solar panels globally that get produced and shipped out. And they were talking about how big are these facilities, each of them. The one that they were at yesterday is 2 million square feet. You tour it in a golf cart. Takes a while. 2 million square feet, and they have 3 buildings. 3 buildings that they're each in. It's like extremely, if you put any high school kid in there, they would be extremely excited to get involved with that. But, we don't do a good job connecting them. It really, it's probably I'm on this tangent about and Brett too, he's really involved in school, what's going on in the school, but those guidance counselors and the people that are influencing students and even parents, getting them awareness of what's going on, more advertising, more social media exposure to the technology that's out there. I think we just got to change the thinking. Yeah. Along that line, maybe a specific question is the chamber, is your work and some of the manufacturers, or even at the at the state level. I know I just saw yesterday where Governor Pillen, just announced he's putting a workforce team together. Sound like probably with you and the chamber to figure out some strategies on this workforce. But that is one of the things. I mean, is there an assertive effort to get robotics and automation labs into the high schools? I live in Elkhorn, and as Tim alluded to, I'm involved and we're getting more involved in school board and whatnot. And so, but we just built a brand new high school in Elkhorn. And for those who are listening and not in Nebraska or wondering what we're talking about, but they just opened a brand new school, and it's great. They put a really nice welding, facility in it, which is great. But really, I think we're kind of, it's still like, well, let's do a small engine and let's do welding, because, as opposed to, is that really that these kids are not really going to be, some of them are, but there's a whole new opportunity with the automation, or the ones that we pushed the last 10 years to go into computer programming and so on and so on. And, we can get on a whole tangent on what we think AI is going to do to the coders, but there's probably a better chance of you fixing that machine and having a job. And it's not, it's not a dirty job anymore. We love Mike Rowe, but the dirty job, it's not that anymore. And so, I mean, is there any assertive effort or how do we get an assertive effort? I think we have to get the automation and the robotics back into the schools, because it's a long play, but that's probably where we got to go.
Yeah. First of all, +1 on that. There's a few examples. Let's talk about robotics specifically. There are a few examples in Nebraska of robotics programs that have that have really taken off, and some teams that there's actually a team out of Norfolk, Nebraska that won a significant award at the Worlds competition. Okay. So they won some cool awards at nationals, and then they went to the Worlds competition and did extremely well there too. I mean, that's the story to talk about, right? And I'm going to take the preaching to the choir route here, although it won't be super serviceable. Can't we imagine the day when the robotics teams are celebrated for those victories in the same way that the school athletics teams are, right? And that's the mindset. That's the dream. I don't think we should spend a whole lot of time talking about that because we won't be able to solve it. But there are already, I think, without a well-defined ecosystem, there's some pop-up robotics teams that have done really well. And so, we are talking, just kind of, I guess at this point, talking about how can we build that ecosystem to really take off and work in Nebraska. I think population and logistics, and there's a few complicated aspects to making something successful like that, but there's definitely a need, there's definitely an interest. And I think that, these robotics teams will be awesome in high schools for all the reasons we know, the exposure to the industry, the training and development that goes on just as a nature of it. Anyway, I think, we're fully behind it. And the role that I'm trying to play at the chamber is, I'm in a unique spot where I'm not state government, so I can't just kind of like make the thing happen and like dictate that the thing happens. But where we see ourselves fitting in is, and I'm a brewmaster by trade, right? So bringing all the recipes together that the thing takes off. And so what I'm trying to do right now is sort out all the ingredients for this thing to happen, and see what we can do to make it take off. Cause I went to my first robot competition, not long after it's probably 2011. I think I went to my first robotics competition, and it was like, you gotta be kidding. This is freaking cool. Yeah. There are just so many different tiers and so many different ways for kids to get involved with stuff that to me, that's the piece to introduce these students at a young age to playing with their hands and solving complex problems and getting into coding and wiring stuff up and failing fast and innovating their way through a problem. That's it, man. I think that's the coolest.
Yeah, it's great. Before we let you go, and I know we've done a lot of preaching to the choir here, but the more we can talk about this, the more we can educate people. Who knows? We may fall in the right ears, but I just wanted to touch on, Mike, I know you host this monthly roundtable, bringing business leaders. I dial in, I listen to that. And recently, there was this economic survey that you guys had commissioned there for the chamber by Ted Abernathy and his group, focused on manufacturing. And some of the statistics he brought out I thought were compelling, that, maybe you wouldn't think of. But what were some highlights from that you think would interest people more broadly? And I think it would apply across other states as well.
Yeah, great question. So Ted Abernathy leads this, let's call him a consulting firm called Economic Leadership. Ted has decades of experience in economic development on the East Coast, and now he's working with well over half the states on certain projects. So we commissioned 3 studies, and unsurprising what the nature of these studies are. The first study we commissioned is just kind of call it Nebraska competitiveness study. So he's going to kind of do his canned economic analysis report, everything from taxes to the business landscape in your state versus your neighbors versus country as a whole, et cetera. He's going to do sort of the general workplace competitiveness study for Nebraska. Second study, and these are in no particular order, just ending on manufacturing. The second study is immigration. So that we approached him. This is not a study that they've done before. Nebraska's unemployment rate hovers around 2%, and recently has been below 2%. This has been going on for now years. and with no end in sight. The last senior graduating class last May was the largest of all of the classes of students in Nebraska, all the way down to preschool. I've got 2 kids and we're trying to catch up as fast as we can, but the cavalry's not coming. This problem of workforce availability is only going to get worse. So we start asking the question, how do you solve it? Nebraska has perennially one of the highest labor participation rates in the country. So not only are we the best at showing up to work with the highest labor participation rate, but our unemployment rate, full employment by the economists is always around 4%. When you hit 4%, they say, okay, that's full employment. We're at less than 2. So we've employed twice as many people as once you get past full employment. So to me, that the engine is revving red hot, right? You're redlining the engine on workforce. There isn't the person on their couch waiting to go into the workplace in Nebraska. So we commissioned this immigration study as what does Nebraska need to do? And how can we play in the environment for legal immigration and settling people into communities rationally to fill open jobs, to unlock productivity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These will save the communities across Nebraska. And then thirdly, the study we commissioned is manufacturing. And so there are a lot of positive points about Nebraska manufacturing. We're currently employing more people in the industry than ever. I think I saw a stat recently that I didn't dig up, but I observed that we've tripled our GDP since 2006 in manufacturing. I don't know if that's foreign or if that's just overall. It would seem like tripling is kind of hard to do overall, but point is Nebraska's manufacturing productivity is just way high right now, and there's no end in sight. But the only retarding factor is the lack of the ability to find workforce. With those 3 studies, the data that Ted and his team revealed to us in that call that you referenced, Tim, was actually an initial cursory study. He's going to go to, I think he said that one was 2 decimal points. He's going to get to 6. So he's right now digging in really deep to find out like what specific industry sectors are we talking about? What specific regions are we talking about? So that was step 1 of peeling back the onion, and his team right now, they're getting through it. We expect to release the full study in February of next year. So he's going to be done sometime around the end of this year. We'll get a little bit of time to kind of sort things out, and we'll launch the fireworks on the studies in February, at which point, we'll be able to sort of showcase all the findings. And really what I want to get to, and again, this is maybe my engineering brain, is what I want to get to is a prioritized list of tactics that look like, some of the stuff is probably lobby oriented, but some of the stuff is going to be coalition building, et cetera. So I want to get to that prioritized list of tactics that can clearly say, dear Nebraska, we've got to do steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to be successful in this area. So that's what I'm looking forward to with this study. We had stumbled upon our own, not stumbled upon, but we had dug up on our own data research. Brian Sloan, our president, did that high school graduated class gradient, with the senior class being the largest one, and they get small. It's almost like the worst slope you could think of. They just get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller all the way down to preschool. So we expect that this study is really going to provide us a lot of that data that'll help us make decisions to move forward. So that's kind of the highlights, kind of the quick and dirty on TED. We do these monthly calls. For a while, they were just kind of open forums, and lately I've been trying to bring some content that manufacturers can take action on or learn from pretty quickly. Last month, we had the FBI talk about cybersecurity, which was really intriguing, really interesting. And so we'll continue to have these monthly calls. I encourage anyone who's listening to this podcast is in Nebraska and maybe not participating in those monthlies to get on board. And the other thing that we do at the chamber, like those monthly calls, the other thing that is really the call to action is our policy council. So twice a year, I apologize for my outlook. I've just got too many things going on and dinging all over the place. our policy councils are really the place where manufacturers, business leaders like yourselves can show up to our table and say, I want legislation that does X, and we can write it, right? We can write some. Or it puts you at the table to say, bill number 1 is good. Bill number 2 is bad. Bill number 3, we don't care about. Bill number 4 is good. That is the place where you can really sit and participate in driving the very things that we're talking about. You want to see more CTE funding? That's the venue to show up and let's arm our lobby team with the true voice of business to walk up the street and make more CTE funding happen. I'm relatively new to this world. I've been in this world about 2 years. I spent 16 years with Anheuser-Busch. It's just amazing to me to be able to sit at that table and be part of the sausage getting made, so to speak, on public policy. So I would invite anyone that's listening to this thing, please join us on our monthly calls. I think we do a decent job now of getting some useful information out there, but the call to action that I would have for anybody is be part of this policy council discussion. That is the place where you get to show up and you get to really make a dent in the future in your community. I speak on behalf of Nebraska, but for those who are listening outside of our state borders, this manufacturing association and or state chamber exists in your place. Look it up, and it's really engaging to be part of that discussion.
Well, we appreciate it, and we too encourage those that are listening to this, seek out these similar sort of programs, initiatives in your state, because this is a global and certainly a U.S. domestic, if not crisis, a significant issue to us realizing continued growth as a country. So whether it be the local, county, state level, it's an important thing that we continue to have discussion about, and great people like you, Mike, that are at the helm trying to push these initiatives forward. And as much as we don't like to talk about political side of this and the state legislative side, it's an important part. So we appreciate you bringing us into that discussion as well. So thanks again, Mike, for joining us. Brett, thank you. And for all of you joining us here today, we appreciate your time. Hope to see you again on the Skillwork Forum in the near future. Have a great day.